If everybody could take their seats, we'd appreciate it. Thank you. My name is Jeff Sluggett. I'm with the Township Attorney's Office. I've been asked, for good or ill, to moderate this evening. Because this has been noticed as a board meeting, technically we're going to have the Township Board call the meeting to order, perform a roll call, and then they'll turn it back to us. So with that,
good evening. Thank you all for coming. My name is Bob Holman. I'm the Township Supervisor, and board members are here. I'd like to call this meeting, the special meeting of the Plainfield Township Board, to order. Would the members of the board present please rise, and the clerk will call the roll.
All right, Mr. Brinkman?
Here.
Mr. Hagedorn?
Yes.
Mr. Pfaff? Here. Mr. Postma, yes. Mr. Holman?
Here.
Mr. Green is absent, and Mrs. Morrow is absent.
Thank you.
and we're back. I'd like to go over a few housekeeping matters before we begin. First off, as I believe everybody in the room probably knows, we're here this evening to elicit information from you concerning the request of Grand Rapids Gravel to extend the period of time during which it would be allowed to operate a soil mining or gravel mining operation. Preliminarily, we'd like to thank the Tribe's Church, whose facilities these are, as well as the Rockford High School video production class, which has partnered with us this evening and which is, I understand, streamlining this for members of the public who were not able to be here this evening. In a few moments, I will go over in very general terms kind of how we got to this point in the process, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mike Berg, who's a representative of Grand Rapids Gravel, who will be in a better position and will be able to explain the basis for their request this evening. After that, we will open it to comments or questions from the public. You'll see there's a microphone here and another one here. When we get to that point in the meeting, if you do wish to speak tonight, feel free to just line up and then we'll just alternate back and forth. Before we get started, though, I would like to say, in addition to speaking this evening, there are several other methods by which you can communicate with the township on this issue. Obviously speaking tonight, but beyond that, there are in the back of the other room, there are comment cards. I don't know how many of you saw them, but there are comment cards in the back. There's a comment box. And if you want to leave a message, a comment, some information that you think the board needs to be aware of, we'd invite you to fill that out and put it in the box. Also, and administratively, one of the easier things for the township, if you want to email the township your comments, I'm going to read the site. It's comments@plainfieldmi.org. And those comments will go directly to the township relative to this issue. Again, a few more housekeeping matters. We are going to respect everyone's time, we're going to ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. We also have, as I said before, some students here who are actually handling the production, and we'd like to be able to finish tonight at a fairly decent hour so no one has an opportunity to try to skip school tomorrow. Again, we'd like to thank the Tribe's Church for the use of its facilities. We'd ask that you respect those facilities and, to the extent you can, keep them neat and clean. There will be a record maintained of the comments made this evening. We are compiling, in addition to the taping that's going on, we are compiling a list of all the comments made. Those will be assembled and forwarded to both the Township Planning Commission and the Township Board. They will also be made available to members of the public if you'd like to see those comments. So with that, in terms of history, and without going back to the 1970s or earlier, and I suspect most of you know this, but I think it's procedurally worth 6, Grand Rapids Gravel received approval for the Boulder Creek Planned Unit Development, which is a type of zoning designation. It was a multi-phase, multi-use development that was approved by the township, and one of the components of that PUD was a soil mining or soil excavation component. As a condition of approval at the time, the original PUD provided that the soil extraction activities were to have concluded by 2011, and then there would be an additional 2 years permitted for the developer to remove the materials off-site. The condition of approval that was granted at the time included wording authorizing the developer, if it chose to come back and ask for a further extension. A number of years later, Grand Rapids Gravel did approach the township and did ask for an extension, and that extension was granted, so that soil extraction activities were to conclude by the end of 2018. We now have the request that I mentioned earlier that's before us, which is a request by Grand Rapids Gravel to extend that one more time for an additional 3 years. So if granted, the extension would allow soil extraction to go on till 2021, and then the mining activities on the site would stop, but there would still be a 2-year period after that by which they could remove materials from the site. In terms of process, as I said, tonight's an informational meeting. That's the only intention this evening, is no decisions will be made. There won't be deliberations amongst the township board. The intention, again, is to just elicit from you your thoughts, your questions, your concerns. Those will be compiled. That will then be moved to the Planning Commission. There will be another public hearing at the Planning Commission to amend the PUD relative to this extension request. We currently anticipate, and that's just our current intent, that Planning Commission meeting will be in early January of next year. Thereafter, the Planning Commission will make a recommendation to the Township Board. The Township Board, too, will hold a public hearing. Both of those public hearings will be noticed ahead of time in the paper. They'll be published ahead of time, and they will be posted on the Township's website. So the point of all that is simply that this is not your only opportunity to comment on this proposal. There will, in fact, be 2 additional public hearings. I guess with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike Berg, the representative of Grand Rapids Gravel, and then when he's finished, we'll go ahead and open it up to members of the public. Anything else? Okay, we're good. Mike?
Thank you. I'm not sure what order your slides are in. Go to another one. One more. Thank you. My name is Mike Berg. I work for Dykema Excavators, representing Grand Rapids Gravel this evening. We've come a long way since 1996 with a lot of changes to what was the original Grand Rapids Gravel property purchased in the late 60s and then ultimately purchased by Andy Dykema in the mid-80s. We are down to the final stages of the mining operation, and what you see is Northland Drive on the west side of the map, 7 Mile to north side of the map, the gravel operation west of Brewer and north of Cannonsburg Road. Back in 2012, we had a similar sketch, and we have significantly reduced the area. The remaining, well, that acreage represents 130 acres. The remaining area to be mined is outlined in the green and the future pond area. In the northeast corner, we have approximately 15 acres of sand that will not be mined. The surprise, I guess, that we have found since 2012, the area that we mined allowed us to use a different technique of exploring how much gravel and the quality of the gravel. When it was originally proposed in '96, we had done approximately, well, actually over 100 soil borings with a 6-inch auger down to 60 feet of depth. And in the last couple of weeks, we have gone back in the lower portion where the remaining gravel still exists, where the future pond is shown, all the way out to the west side of Brewer with an excavator, and have dug 11 test holes where we have gone down 20 feet and found that the material is much richer than what we had found when we had done the 100-plus borings 30 years ago. So that's the purpose for making the extension. The existing pond represents about 2.5 acres. The highlighted blue area that's elongated to the east is approximately 10 acres, and that would be an open water feature that would be developed around in the future. The other thing that has changed since 2012, we have moved the actual plant 800 feet to the west, where I have labeled the existing plant from where it was previously located, and it's been lowered about 35 feet. So that, I think, is a significant plus with regards to where we were 6-7 years ago. We are requesting, as Jeff indicated, a mining extension for 3 years, terminating at the end of 2021. We do have the desire to still stockpile material and remove that material until the end of 2023, and then there's going to be a need to break down the equipment, and I think our original PUD approval allowed for 180 days, where we would put a timeline that it would be complete September 1st of 2024. The stockpile that you see down in the southwest corner has recently been measured, and we've got approximately 265 ton of 14 different products stockpiled in that southwest corner, north and east of the loop. The availability of this material has gotten smaller and smaller throughout this western Michigan community, and there's a number of existing sites that have closed. Grand Isle on West River, Jenison plant out in Jenison for Grand Rapids gravel is scheduled to be closed in 2019. We finished up a project known as Cedar Lake a number of years ago. Cedar Valley is closing next year, and then Ava Aggregates on Coit Avenue is also, I think, at the final legs of their mining operation. As far as the need, this ends up being a resource that is limited. The Jenison area, unfortunately, has been developed with a lot of the gravel being covered up over time and not having been mined, so that resource is getting to be a smaller and smaller and more desirable product. Grand Rapids gravel in itself has 5 ready-mix plants, the largest being in Granville, one out in Holland, another one in Dutton, one up at Cedar Springs, and another one in Muskegon. Grand Rapids Gravel also provides significant material to Coit Avenue Gravel that is owned by the Dykemas for their ready-mix material. Then Dykema Excavators, with their various projects throughout the course of a year, also uses Grand Rapids Gravel product. Another opportunity that we have utilized is selling for highway projects for other contractors, one of which is the project that hopefully will be done in a few days from 10 Mile to 14 Mile. They have purchased in excess of 40,000 tons for that project alone. The Kent County Road Commission is a big purchaser, and even Plainfield Township Water Department has purchased a number of products from our site here right at Boulder Creek. And then also another one would be private paving companies purchase quite a bit of material from us, but those are the bigger users that we currently are providing product to. We do have a number of required DEQ permits that we have. There's a water discharge permit, as well as an air quality, and then a water volume usage that has to be filed annually. The material that we processed since 2012 is 1,574,860 tons. And we're now down to the remaining volume, based on those test holes that we did, of 1,312,000 cubic tons is what is left on site currently. And in our last few years, we have been able to maintain roughly a 450,000 ton production level, and the economy has picked up since the slump in 2006 to the point that we think that that volume can be maintained, assuming the economy is as healthy as it has been the last 3 or 4 years. So we are comfortable with making a commitment that the project will be complete in the 3-year window that we've talked about. The other important question mark, I think, in terms of quickness of which the product will be used, with a new governor and let's fix the darn roads, we anticipate MDOT's volume will be increased, Kent County's volume will be increased, as it has, with regards to even the gasoline tax. We'd like to also volunteer an update of the Boulder Creek PUD for 2012, which I understand will be on the website for everybody's review, but we had updated that when we made our last request for an extension, and then from 2012 to 2018, we have also updated that. Currently, just to summarize quickly, the Prestwick condos has been completed. The Preserve condos on the south side of Cannonsburg Road, we have completed 67 units in the 3-phase, and we have put the infrastructure in for the final 30 units, which will be Phase 4 to the east of the cemetery and all the way out to the pond by the maintenance building for the golf course. We have also completed Phases 1 and 2 of Boulder View, the 54 single-family home sites on the north side of Cannonsburg, east of Brewer, and we will continue, as we have with each phase of the project, landscaping and irrigating the berms along the public roadways which have limited access to them, Cannonsburg, Brewer, as well as 7 Mile. Currently, the total number of home sites to date is 250 units, both single-family and condominium units. We think that this has been a big addition to the Plainfield Township tax base, and hope and intend to see it built out in the future so that there will be a nice community for which we can all be proud of. Thank you for your time.
Okay, with that, unless there are any questions before we get started, I'd like to invite anyone, our supervisor. Oh, I'm sorry, and I should have said that. When you begin, if you stand up and you do wish to speak, if you could introduce yourself by name and address, that would be helpful. So, with that, as I said, we have 2 microphones, one on either side, and I would invite anyone who would like to at this time to begin coming up. Again, just as a reminder, we're trying to limit comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
Thank you very much. William Todd Vanek with Vanek Law. My address is 6739 Cortland Drive, Suite 102, Rockford, Michigan, 49341. I am here on behalf of Prestwick Condominium Association. They are the governing unit of the Prestwick condominiums of Boulder Creek. From the map, they are located on the east side, upright, it says Prestwick Condos. I represent the residents, members, and the association board of that group. A board packet has been provided and delivered to the Plainfield Township for review by the trustees. I'm certain you haven't had an opportunity to review that yet, but it is there for your consideration. If you would look at it, it puts the comments I make tonight in a finer detail with more substance behind it. Also, my association wanted to say that there is no ill will against Grand Rapids Gravel. We understand what they're trying to do. We just simply are requesting that it not occur. The permit has been issued and ongoing since 1996 without interruption in the permit, which means it's been continuing now for more than 20 years. The condominium association was developed in 2004, referring to Prestwick condos, and since that time, the mining operation and permit have continued. The mining operations were understood at the time that Prestwick owners bought that it would end in 2011, when most people purchased their units, or before most people purchased their units. It was then extended in 2011-2012 to be till December 31, 2018. All of these details were known by Grand Rapids Gravel, and they acted accordingly and kept mining. There's 4 primary reasons why this has been a problem with an extension for Prestwick. Number 1 is they are concerned about health issues. A number of the residents have noticed an ongoing and increasing problems with coughing, irritation, respiratory issues. There are some research in our packet talking about silica. Frankly, there's been no defined diagnosis of it, but it is a concern. It's a relatively new situation. 2, the ongoing nuisance. Prestwick condo, located to the east again of the mining area, is under a constant receipt of dust and debris from the mining operations. Many of the residents report that they are unable to use decks, walk outside. They receive excessive dust, dirt. They're walking in and out of outside. It's grittiness, taste in the mouth. The reality is that that dust has been excessive. One of the conditions contained previously in a grant or extension was the idea to keep the dust down. It's not either being done or it's just too big of a job to keep down at a level that Prestwick condominiums does not continually get bombarded with dust, dirt, and issues. There's constant dirt on the road, gravel on the road, which is causing issues with vehicles. The project is now on a 7-year extension. What is stopping that from an extension again? We had understood in the last extension that it would be done at that time. It simply hasn't. We would request that it be done and continued and stopped now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
All right.
sir.
My name is Jim Tucci. I live on Boulder Meadow at the very end, 4060 Boulder Meadow. If you're good with the pea shooter, you could probably, from that sand sign, hit my house pretty well. First of all, I want to disavow any knowledge of the science behind mining or environmental. I have a doctorate, but it's only in medicine, and I'm a clinical neuroscientist. So I don't know anything about the environmental impact of this kind of work. But when I've spoken to people on our block, and I think I've probably talked to more than half of the people on the block, everybody's got the same concern, and it mainly probably focuses on the unknown. So questions like, what has been the comment to we assume a written plan submitted by Grand Rapids Gravel to the DEQ, to the EPA. It went by kind of fast, but it sounded like by the time this is all over, there's going to be over 2 million cubic tons removed. Is that correct? Because there's already been over 1 million.
Restate that number, please.
Is it 2 million cubic?
Tons? We're dealing with tons.
Yeah.
So the processing that remains,
Well, it's not cubic then, right? So how much would be how much has been taken out in terms of mass, and then how much would be at the end?
to date, we have taken out 10 million tons
10 million tons.
since 1996.
Okay.
And we intend to request an extension to take out 1.3 more tons.
Tons, okay. There was cubic something in there, I thought I heard. But so the issue for us is, there's even to the naked eye, there's been a lot of land removed. Some of us who are new to this area, see we assume accidental creation of things like Lake Versluis, and wonder if this continues and more tons of earth are removed, what will that do to the nature, the dynamics of water flow if we have an unusual event like we did a few years ago where we had 5 inches in an hour rain on the top of the ridge and create rivers and turn the golf course basically into a large lake with a few little islands sticking up. But other things are sound, particulate matter, impact on wildlife, impact on people with respiratory illnesses. And probably most of all, I think what worries us immediately is that most of us who moved in there were told that there was going to be closure within a couple of years. Now, a lot of that may have been misinformation, but people even going back 15, 20 years who bought in were told that within 5 years there was going to be closure. So if I understand what you explained correctly, it's at least 3 years of actual excavation, 2 years to basically remove the matter that's left, and then 180 days on top of that to get rid of the equipment. Is there, the other question we had is, so after all that's done, so that's almost 6 years, is there a reclamation plan, and has it been submitted to both the township and to the government?
Yeah, as part of the original submittal, there was an end grading plan that we have to build to, subject to what we find as we've gone through the excavation process. And when we laid this out originally, we have made modifications as we relocated Canonsburg Road and Brewer. The Road Commission chimes in, MDOT chimes in, and there's a couple intersections that were built when the roads were relocated, so the access to the future development area, the gravel mining area, are restricted to the frontage on Canonsburg Road, and then opposite Prestwick Condos driveway is where the other access point will be, in addition to, at the south end, the Boulder View Drive access. But in terms of the end use, that will end up still complying with the rough grades that we had originally. The cul-de-sacs that are shown on that grading plan have been denied, if you wish, as the Road Commission doesn't like cul-de-sacs. The other comment that you had made was regarding the stormwater. We have made improvements along the way, and I can summarize them very quickly. It doesn't show up clearly, but that this drawing is showing that when we redid the roundabout at 7 Mile and Brewer, there's a 42-inch culvert that we put in underneath 7 Mile, and then when we built Prestwick's driveway, there's a 42-inch culvert that takes that flood condition from up north of the cemetery that also gets into a 42-inch right at the northwest corner of the parking lot of the clubhouse. We have now opened up a grade so that stormwater going through that 42-inch gets into the pit, and then when we relocated Canonsburg Road, there's a 48-inch culvert underneath Canonsburg Road that will ultimately provide access to the river.
So I know I've already been up here a while, but so I guess in summary would say, I think what I've heard from everybody who I've had a chance to talk to is the concern that since none of us is experts, has there been an impartial review that could then be presented to our board, our township board, on what, number one, what has already been the impact of this work, number two, what would be the increase in that impact with 6 more years of this activity, not only on wildlife, water, but also on quality of life for the people who live in the area. And then lastly, is there really a reclamation plan that the Township Board has seen, finds acceptable, and quite frankly, has teeth in it, in the agreement to do the reclamation in case when you and I are not here perhaps, and somebody else is in charge of executing that, they decide not to do it. We don't, none of us wants to be tied up in, with all due respect to legal people, to be tied up in the courts forever.
There is a bond in place that's been posted by Grand Rapids Township for the reclamation to occur at the benefit of the township. Back when we started the project, we were required to put up a bond for the township for the outcome of getting the site graded according to the approved plan, and that's still in place. I'm doing this from memory, but I want to say it was $400,000.
So it's an example of...
I should have mentioned, and I did not, obviously there are a fair number of township records relative to the history of this PUD. We are going to try to post as many of those records as possible on the township's website. Obviously, you can come in and take a look at the records if that's your preference, but otherwise, we will be, as quickly as we can, posting those records on the website, so you'll be able to access those before the Planning Commission or Township Board meetings.
So unlike Prestwick, we don't have a, for some reason, which is unique to any place I've ever lived with condominiums, we don't have an association that has the people who live there participating in it. There are no officers. There's no financial report on an annual basis. But what we really want to see before anything is approved by our Township Board is that they have looked at impartial reports on what has been the impact so far, what will be the impact in the future, and is the monies set aside for the reclamation really adequate, and is there some teeth in the agreement so that we're not tied up in paying for court costs for the next 10, 15 years.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, Jim Bissell, 6581 West River. I'm concerned about the pollution that was dumped there in the 70s. Wolverine Worldwide, all through the 70s, dumped tannery sludge just to the east of the clubhouse. And also there's a pond a little bit south of that kind of pond there that was had plating materials from plating companies dumped. And my concern is that there's probably considerably more sludge there than they found at House Street, since I'm sure their production was scaled up in the 70s. I think it was 1970 to 1979 they dumped there. It was a huge pond, and I looked at an engineering diagram for it, and it's probably just the length of a fairway away from the gravel pit. So I'm sure a lot of water, especially when it rains 5 inches, goes into that pit. Plus, part of it's underneath the 10th fairway and the 11th, I think, tee green. So the golf course is constantly irrigating that grass. And probably, they only put a sand cap over the pit, and they had a lot of trouble doing it because it was so sludgy and the equipment sank into it. I'm just concerned all that, they should have put a clay cap over it to keep the water out, but they didn't. And I'm just concerned that all that water flowing over that area is just going to go right down in that pit, and has been going down in that pit for some time. I just wondered if the water in the pit has been tested for PFAS and heavy metals from the plating pond.
Good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Richard Tank. I live over the preserves at 3752. I'm urging the board not to renew the permit for the following reasons. Number one, I guess when we bought in early 12, we were told the operation was going to be over in a year or two. It's a repeat here, but more importantly, it's the dust. There's constant plume of dust, and when the wind's blowing, it's terrible, especially for the people to the east, but also some of it when it's coming out of the northwest, the wind, we get it too. And so there's dust from the crusher, dust from the conveyor that drops it, dust from the variety of vehicles that are running over there on the grounds. And that's the main one, is the dust, but also then the dirt and the debris that's brought out in the road when the trucks come out. That'll lay there at least on Cannonsburg roads for weeks at a time when they're using that entrance, and it creates more dust, more dirt, and whatnot. The last would be the noise from the crusher operation. When you're outside, it is quite annoying. It's constant. It's a hum in the background, and on occasion you actually hear stuff going on when the windows are closed and you're in your home. Buckets dropping or whatever's going on over there. If, again, like I said, I hope the township will not renew it, and if for some reason they get weak and find excuses to approve it, I hope that there will be a system of penalties, very strong penalties of, I'd say $1,000 per incident, where if they can't keep the dust down from the conveyor, can't keep the dust down on the roads, can't keep the dust down on the crusher, that these penalties would be assessed on a daily basis. And I would say the determination, as a suggestion for when that would happen, is when a township official observes this dust, dirt, and debris, or if 2 or more residents in the area call in, that would trigger the penalty. And that is, the dust and the dirt is the main thing. And they should have washers on the whole system all the time. They're running, washing it down, and on the roads continuously. They should have the trucks. Occasionally you'll see them out there dumping water, but it's not a haphazard kind of will make you feel good today deal. It's got to be continuous if you extend the permit. And I think there's got to be that, again, the harsh penalties, so they work together with the township and the residents.
Right.
And that's all I have to say.
Good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Scott Gustafson, 6118 Boulder Ridge. We just moved in a year ago, and just a couple notes. We've done a little bit of research into DEQ requirements on fugitive dust emissions. I didn't hear that particular permit mentioned, so we'd be curious to know if that permit has been pulled. It is required by large-scale mining operations. A couple things that we've noticed anecdotally, riding bicycles on 7-mile truck traffic and the amount of gravel that's on the road continually. We ride bicycles almost every day in the summer, trying to get over to the White Pine Trail or other places, and that is a huge issue. There is no dust mitigation that I've seen on the exit. There is supposed to, according to these DEQ standards, be wheel washes, speed limits, an area for the trucks to discharge that dust upon exit onto a public road. Trucks are frequently driving too fast. My daughter was ran off the road on her bicycle at one point this summer. So if approved, then I would strongly object to that as a new resident who was also told that mining operations would cease this year. Seems like a common theme for many of us here, that we're told one thing and then it just keeps going in perpetuity. That if approved, that these fugitive dust emission requirements would be strictly enforced. There's also opacity requirements, but that the DEQ puts out as far as how much dust is visible in the air, which is constantly an issue. On top of that, anecdotally, our family has suffered from an unbelievable amount of sinus and upper respiratory infections this year, and we moved, and that was not the case last year. My son, a nationally ranked cyclist, is out of competition for the rest of the year due to 3 sinus infections in a row since September. This is likely related to the amount of dust due to prevailing winds up towards our house. We did not keep our windows open all summer because of dust and noise. So health is an issue. And in addition to that, population density in this area has obviously increased, partly due to the development plans here, but it's time for this operation to cease, in my opinion.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Gene Van Dongen, 5928 Lakeside Lane. I was a teacher for 40-plus years, teacher and coached 3 sports at Northview High School, where I, excuse me, dust, where I met the Dykema family back in 1966 and developed a close friendship with the family. In fact, Jim here, who is representing his company, was a student of mine and also played football for me. So sometimes it gets a little ambiguous when you're dealing with people that you like, but there are things that are happening that you have to put a cushion on. I would like to, at this time, thank the Prestwick Board, which put forth a tremendous amount of time and energy in presenting some of the problems, most of the problems, hiring Todd Benek to represent our association It sounds like the other people in the preserve and up on the hill haven't yet accomplished an association, but I'm sure that's going to change in the near future. Obviously, this is a profit motive. It isn't going to do me any good to wait another 5 years for this to finish up, because I'll be 86 going on 87. You might as well put a plot in the backyard, because I don't think I'm going to have the energy or the health to continue that long in the condominium that I'm living in. Right now, in the past couple of years, I've developed COPD. So I have to take medication twice a day to eradicate, or at least to ease the problem. The other problem I have is I have friends and neighbors in the neighborhood who vacation during the summertime at their cottages or in other areas for a week or two, who come back and are complaining about coughs and other problems with their breathing. So, on one hand, I can appreciate the profit motive that Dykemas are experiencing. They're wonderful people. I've never seen a man work as hard. When I first started working 16 years as a starter and ranger at Boulder Creek than Andy Dykema. I saw him more than once go into a hole and help another worker. So it's respect, but it's also, in my opinion, common sense. Take care of the people that you promised that you would eliminate the conditions that are causing us to experience health problems. It would be nice to be able to live under different conditions. And I've heard it more than once from the people in the neighborhood that, our property values are going to go down, and some are even considering, with the problems they're experiencing, of changing to another location. As Jim would tell you, 3 minutes isn't enough for a classroom teacher. But I do appreciate the time, and I'm glad to hear that there will be further discussions. So I can put away my 15 pages of notes, and we'll deal with it later.
Good.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Fred Gaybauer with the Preserve Condo Association, and I just want a clarification. I am on the board of directors, and we have met with Dykema and have had good discussions, and we've put our position in writing. And just so the clarification, the Preserve is represented here tonight.
Thank you.
I just said clarification that the Preserve Condo Association is represented here at the meeting this evening.
Yes, sir.
My name is James A. Stover. I live at 5545 Chauncey Drive, Northeast. I have lived in the township for nearly 44 years. I have seen the good and the bad and the ugly of this project. I think that it should stop. Like some of the other people have said, it's a profit thing. Great, the township makes money, but what about those of us who are residents in this township and have to deal with it? The traffic. I had a near collision with a Grand Rapids Gravel double bottom rig at 7 Mile in Northland Drive. I called Grand Rapids Gravel. They never responded to my complaint. And in your original agreement, you're supposed to have a board and a person that responds to the problems and complaints of the residents. The traffic on Cannonsburg, the traffic on 7 Mile, your original agreement said that trucks going south were to exit on Brewer, trucks going north would exit on 7 Mile. That doesn't take place. You go wherever you feel like it. You're not just mining there, you're stockpiling. I see trucks daily bringing product in. That didn't come from that site. You brought it from someplace else. I also saw your stinky green pits back in the 70s where the PFAS was buried. Even though I'm to the east, they won't test my well, so I don't know if I'm affected or not. But all the water that runs over that golf course ends up back in the river or someplace into a water system. It's time for it to end. The township has rolled over too many times for Dykema. You gave them frontage on the river. Would they have done that to me had I wanted to build condos on Grand River? I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ed Rotz. I'm at 4110 Boulder Meadow. My biggest complaint, well, there's a few of them. I'll try to do it in 3 minutes. The first thing is the dust, and everybody said it. I live right straight, so the southwest wind brings all the dust. I mean, my patio table, you have to wash it. You don't wipe it every day, you wash it daily. My windows have to be closed during the summertime. I have a question about that development that I live in. When I moved here 14 and a half years ago, I was told this gravel pit would be there like everybody else, 3 to 5 years. Because of that, and because of the fact that it's never been turned over in association to us, and maybe this is one of the reasons. So we have no leverage and no power to stop this nonsense that keeps going on. You heard a lot of health issues here tonight. Fortunately, I don't think I've been impacted by that yet, and I may have to move before I find out. I am not in favor of this. I know that Andy Dykema is a big name in this area, but I have yet to see some of the good things that have happened. I understand he's a great man and a great family, but this association, like I said before, has never been turned over. Nothing gets done in there. The road is a mess. There's no accountability of the money. A few years ago, one of the residents, Mr. Lund, wanted to become the president of the association, so he went and got some of the financials. And he said, Ed, can you explain why the plowing one year was 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, and all of a sudden it's $4,172.38, and I said, yes, because the golf course was doing the plowing, and they took whatever money they wanted out of that pot, and when they outsourced it, it became a real number. So I know that we're all going to be in for a big surprise if that ever does get turned over to us. There will be no money to fix the road. Legally, that was supposed to have been turned over a while back, somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago. So I have lost all faith in your request for 3 years, because I think my great-grandson will probably be at the same meeting standing up with this same request. I really do. So, I think, I haven't said much, but I think a lot of people tonight have said a lot of things that this township board should take into consideration the impact on the health of the people. Do you care about more money? There'll be homes built or something. Supposedly, I was told there were going to be 3 holes of the golf course moved over there and homes built years ago. I don't know what happened to all that, but there would be tax money from these homes. It doesn't all have to come from the gravel pit. And the other gentleman, and I want to compliment him for mentioning that, I believe that most of the dust that comes in my house comes from these big trucks that are dumping product to be sorted over there. I don't think it comes from the mining. Does a mining permit allow you to haul in product to be sorted? I don't know. But I just want to close and say, I really don't have any faith, but I do think that Mr. Dykema will get his way.
Thank you. Anybody else, before we get to somebody who's already spoken once?
My name is Jack Gibbons. I live at 4645 Skyhawk. I have a question for you, sir, the one that's not looking at me at the moment. I believe you said that the access to the new mining is going to be off of 7 Mile Road and one instance off of Cannonsburg. Is that correct?
The extension doesn't change any of the access points. We have access currently off of 7 Mile. We also have access off of Brewer.
Okay, that's what I asked. That's what I meant. You know, so you have the 7 Mile access at this point. I assume it's going to get more busy.
No, it's not going to be any busier. We won't have any more trucks coming and going than what we currently are having in the current operation.
Well, the reason I'm asking that is because something dawned on me today. I've been fought a housing development over at Cortland and Belding Road, and it was recently approved with the help of Plainfield Township by supplying the water to it and that sort of stuff, et cetera. And it dawned on me that because Cortland and Belding is currently rated an F, the whole intersection of Northland and Belding is rated an F, the solution by both the Cannon Township and Plainfield Board was to simply have everybody go south on Cortland down to 7 Mile and come and access there at the corner. But all of a sudden I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wait a minute, if you're going to be doing all this additional mining, and that traffic is going to explode probably in the next year, I'm going to say tenfold, because this is hundreds of homes and apartments and condominiums that are going to go in there. You know, are you making any sort of accommodation for that additional traffic and how your trucks respond to that? Because I, too, have traveled that road hundreds, if not thousands of times. I've lived here since '81, and many times have had near misses with the double trucks coming out of there as they pull out of that intersection, roar out, and these sorts of things. And I would just like everyone here to think about, not only is that development going to add a whole mess of new traffic, but I hope to God that your trucks are going to be paying a lot more attention to the people around here and that sort of stuff. And I don't agree with this either, because I was at those meetings in '96, way back in '96. We heard back then, we're not going to even see the gravel pits or the gravel piles. This is going to be handled so well, and it was going to be done in 10 or 15 years. And here we are 25 years later. So I'm not in agreement with this at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you're up.
I just wanted to clarify my concern about the pollutants, and you didn't answer me when I asked if you tested the water in the gravel pit for pollutants.
We've had meetings with the DEQ and have a work plan in place where we will be testing, in addition to the testing that we've already done, to understand the pollution that has occurred, and we are taking action against Wolverine for the dumping on the golf course property.
I know there's monitoring wells all around that site. Do you know if the levels have increased in those?
We haven't taken any tests on monitoring wells, but we are going to be installing additional monitoring wells as part of the work plan.
Okay. My concern is that if it is polluted and you're pumping it into the river, it'll stick to the proteins on the bottom of the river in the mud, and it'll go downstream to where the township's wells draw it out of the river, and then we'll have to continuously pay for these big carbon bed filters to get it back out of the water.
Okay, good. Thank you.
My name is Paul Kalis. I'm the president of the board at Prestwick, and I live at 4010 Tom Morris Drive. My concern is the open-endedness of your extensions. I understand your original permit to go through 2011. You were suffering from the recession that we had, but nobody told you you had to slow down your mining. That was unilaterally decided by your company. When you got the extension, you got 7 years, and it was not brought to anybody's attention during that time. You had signed some agreements on dust control, and that has never been enforced or complied with. We have absolutely no faith that if an extension went on, that they would comply now, because they've never done it in the past. As a person said earlier about having some punishments that had teeth, if they have a bond of $400,000, there's no teeth whatsoever. That's not even a baby tooth. When Dykema and Mr. Berg came and presented to us their intentions, they said they would be able to mine this in 3 years unless there was a slowdown, and every forecast looks like there might be a recession between now and 2020. If there was some big mistake in their granted with the extension, it needs to be a hard date with no hope for an extension, because they will slow down. They will need another extension. They will need another extension after that. They will keep this as long as they are able to. I have no faith that this will ever end in my lifetime. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name's Ed Schindorf. I live at 6205 Archer. I guess one question to the board is, this size of a scope of mining, what is the industry standard on the amount of time it takes to mine this gravel? A simple question.
James Stover again. I forgot to add a couple comments. When I had the near collision with the double-bottom truck, it was in the middle of 7 Mile and Northland Drive. So that truck was making a left turn in front of me in violation of the traffic signal. Had it been a single-bottom truck, he probably would have cleared the intersection and I wouldn't have had to have stopped. But I was stopped in the middle of the intersection with a red light, and another vehicle was following that truck, which nearly ran into me also. You're not keeping the dirt off the roadways. Last week I observed it was kind of a joke. It was a skip loader with like a big broom on the front of it, pushing dirt. What happened to the mechanized street sweepers, which you used in the past? The dirt builds up on 7 Mile, Canonsburg. There's a real nice mess over there now where you're spreading topsoil along the ponds. You got more dirt on the road than you do on the pile. Where's the cleanup? Where's the enforcement of these regulations? I have no faith, like many of these other people, that you'll ever comply to anything other than the dollar at the end of the game. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Joel Erdmans. I'm going to be the minority here. From West River, 908 West River Center Drive. I operate, I've actually poured probably 90% of all of you guys, if you live in any of those complexes, duplexes, single units, all of the concrete, that's what I do. I use this as a natural resource for everybody around town. There is a shortage of material, raw material, that is in Grand Rapids. I don't know if you guys know that, but We do about 1,500 foundations a year. The Dikemas are a big impact in the greater Grand Rapids area, and this resource here would be helpful, not just for Plainfield, but for all over. It's a centrally located spot. I get the dust, and maybe that's something that, you know, they could work on, but as far as getting the products out of the ground and using it for roads, bridges, houses, footings, the drainage that goes around your foundation, it's gonna hurt the greater Grand Rapids area.
Ma'am.
Things are closing up. There's a shortage everywhere. More permitting. But I'm just giving my 2 cents. I know, I'm just saying, I drive in all your neighborhoods. I'm pouring a wall. I poured one today over along the river. It supplies ready mix, you know, the stones, the aggregate, ready, you know, concrete's made out of water, sand, concrete, and gravel. So, for what it's worth, I had to come here in support of it because it is good for the greater Grand Rapids area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Steve Denhoff. I'm on the map at 4073 Boulder View. Really quick, I mean, I understand that this is a scarce resource, but you mentioned a lot of other places closing. Can you give a brief statement as to why other places are closing? Are they in the same circumstance?
Let me think of the ones that we cited. Jennison is run out of the raw material, which is a large plant that's been running for years, long before the Dikemas owned that property. Then there's Cedar Lake, which is near the Jennison pit. That was a lake expansion instead of development, and we ran out of material there. And it was adjacent to a county drain that we couldn't excavate up to a certain distance of the drain. The Cedar Valley one is property across the street that has a deposit of gravel that is going to be depleted probably in 2019. The Coit Avenue property is out of raw material, and then Ottawa Aggregates is, I believe, very close to the end of their mining permit and very close to finishing the aggregate that is on site there also.
Yes, sir.
Frank Hoekstra, 4540 Canonsburg Road. I see the trucks going up and down the road, and it's a minor thing. To me, you got to take gravel where it's at. You can't take gravel out of a clay bank or out of a sand pit. And I know it's getting tough to find gravel. If there's a 50 or 100 acre piece of ground with gravel under it, they build 5 houses on it, there's no more gravel extraction out of that acreage. The trucking thing, you go to some of the bigger towns like Detroit, them double bottoms are coming in there from halfway up to Flint. You think you got trouble now with trucks. Them guys got some long hauls. The cost of the material, the cost of the truck, the fuel, a man's wages to drive that truck, tires, insurance, license, the price of concrete is going to go up. It's just a financial thing. It's got to happen. And as far as I'm concerned, take it where they got it, and if they can go down another 20, 30 foot, that's the place to get the gravel. You can't get it out of the river. I own just about a mile of river frontage on the north side of the Grand River, and there's no gravel down there. It's clay, river bottom, whatever, but I think that Andy Dykema and Grand Rapids Gravel has done a lot for Plainfield Township. The Northland Drive from Plainfield Bridge down to Plainfield Avenue, years ago, that was a floodplain. All them businesses on both sides of Northland Drive are because Andy Dykema and Grand Rapids Gravel built that up above the floodplain. I'm a little older than a lot of them sitting in here, but in about 1940s, the Grand River would flood that pretty every year. County trucks would take us kids across through the floodwater to get to school over there on Archer and Grand River Drive, and take us back at night to get back through the floodwater. The tax base for Plainfield Township on them businesses is tremendous. It just, I think you got to take the gravel wherever you can get it. There's just no other way of doing it. That's about all I got to say, I guess.
Thank you.
I got a lot more, but I ain't a public speaker.
Just one comment about the depletion of this natural resource. I don't think anybody argues that that's happening. I also don't think that the answer is to just charge ahead until you're at a road. The bottom line is this is going to have to be solved sooner or later, this lack of a natural resource of gravel. Postponing it for 3 years isn't going to solve the problem of growth in the Grand Rapids area. And I think there's some personal animus that you heard here tonight towards this supposed empire because of the Dykemas. And I think that's, well, some of it is based on fact and some of it isn't. But I think there's a general feeling that promises have been broken, and that in general, those of us who live in that area, even for a shorter time as the 11 years that I've been there, have the feeling that there is a lack of regard for the quality of life of the people who live in that area, and that it's been evident year in and year out. And that creates the animus and the lack of trust. I would say, however much longer that operates, it would be good if that could be healed, that animus could be removed. But doing a couple more years, might be a good thing. It might not, given the health concerns. And I don't know if building more houses and repairing roads in an area and at the same time decreasing the quality of life and the value of those houses and those properties makes a whole lot of sense.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak?
Jeff Livesey, 4690 Munising Drive. I've lived there in Leisure Village now for 6 years. It's dusty over there, yeah, but I want to be a good neighbor. If the Dykemas want to be good neighbors, somehow they should enforce these requests to keep the dust down. The big concern I have is the PFAS. Those ponds, at least one of them is 2,800 parts per trillion, where standing water is supposed to only be 20. That water is being used to irrigate the golf course, and I golf there 1 to 2 times a week. I frequent the restaurant. I like that it's there, but now, and I hope the Plainfield Township people are listening close, now they're turning around in the sand trap areas, the overgrowth, and dumping it within 300 feet of Leisure Village well fields. I think that should stop. I think that should be removed out of there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
I'm off short, so I'm going to have to tip this. I'm Donna Westvier. I live in the Prestwick condominiums, 4008 Tom Morris Drive, which is directly across from the gravel pit. And we purchased there in 2005, and we were definitely told it would be closed by 2011, and that area would be developed. One of the things that we're finding at Prestwick is the dust that blows directly on us constantly is making our condos so terribly dusty that every year our dues are being used to wash professionally our condo buildings. And we ourselves have to pay to have our windows washed, which is totally futile, because they'll wash them, and within a couple days you'd never know it because of the dust that blows directly at us. This is coming from a woman's perspective, but it is an important thing, and I definitely think we have had enough of the gravel pit. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that that dust might have pollutants in it too if it's coming out of that pit. And I just question why they built all those houses around the pit. Didn't they know people were going to complain? You know?
Okay, yes, sir.
I'm Art Spalding, 3301 Sunset Bluff. In 1996, when the entire project, including the soil removal area, was approved by the Township Board, I happened to have been serving on the Township Planning Commission, so I was pretty familiar with what was going on at that time. The approval included a number of conditions for the operation of the soil removal area. And number 18 of those conditions states the permittee, as part of its dust control planning, shall conduct mining on the project in phases as set forth on the approved PUD plan. The permittee shall have open for mining purposes a maximum of 30 acres with no more than 13.5 acres open at a time at any one location. In order to accomplish that objective, when an area in a phase has been excavated to its bottom grade, the permittee will require 200 linear feet adjacent to the active mining phase for the purpose of conducting its mining operations. Accordingly, at the end of each mining season, the permittee shall conduct reclamation of the disturbed areas from the previous season in an annual reclamation process by spreading topsoil and seeding the area to within 200 feet of the active mining phase. The following season, the 200-foot area will be utilized as a working area, and mined material will be conveyed across the seeded and restored area by conveyor. And each subsequent season, the disturbed areas will be topsoiled and seeded to within 200 feet of the active mining phase as described above. The minutes of the meeting at which the Township Board approved this contains the following recitation. It says, Mike Berg, engineer for the project, presented the board members with drawings and described in detail the phases of the mining operation. Mr. Berg explained to the board that 200-foot increments of land would be exposed, mined, and restored. If you wouldn't mind going back to the prior picture that we had up in front of us. Somebody do that? Yeah. Now, could you explain to us where on this site, since 1996, you have topsoiled and seated.
Okay, last call.
Where's the answer?
No, again, in fairness, the point of this meeting has been and was stated at the beginning, we're trying to get your concerns and questions. We've answered some of the other questions, I acknowledge that.
One question.
Yes, sir.
Will you enforce that rule? Will the township now enforce that rule?
That's perfectly fine question. I'm not in a position to answer that question right now.
You get that question.
Absolutely. No. As I said, we are compiling a list of the issues that have been raised this evening. So, yes, ma'am.
Teresa Robinson, 3530 Ann Cliff. This right here is a prime example of why this is one meeting. Nothing's going to be decided here. You all need to continue. You need to continue attending meetings. You need to continue to stand up for yourselves. Don't let this go on. If this is not what you want, do not let it go on. And don't think that this meeting is going to make any decisions at all. Township officials, I hope you're listening to the people.
It's Jack Gibbons again. I have one question. Is it correct that the mining contract extension is supposed to stop December of this year? In other words, it expires? Okay, yet I'm hearing that this is going to go in front of the Planning Commission January, February, March, whenever it is, and then there's a process and all these sorts of things. Therefore, my question is, does the mining operation then cease December 31st, 2018, until such time that an extension is granted? Or does it just keep right on mining?
The processing of gravel in Michigan is limited to above 20 degrees probably. We can't have continued freezing temperatures and get the plant to run. So once the temperatures drop permanently into the 20s, the plant is not running.
Well, let's suppose they don't. Let's suppose they remain at 30 degrees through December, and then 30 degrees through January, February,
We are
March.
obliged to stop December 31 of this year.
You are what?
He said obliged.
You're not obliged.
No, he said he is
You
obliged.
are obliged. Okay.
Okay, really, last call. Okay, then, here's how I'd like to, or how I believe we'll proceed. We will assemble the issues and concerns that have been raised this evening. Again, I would encourage you, if something occurs to you between here and 75 feet in that direction, there's comment cards over there. Please take the time, fill out, add your comments, throw them in the box. And again, we do have an email address set up specifically to receive your comments. And again, that's comments@plainfieldmi.org. It's also noted on the comment card. The information gathered this evening, the questions raised this evening will be processed internally. We will then be putting together essentially a package. That's going to be going, as I said, to the Planning Commission. The next stage in this process, if you will, is a public hearing at the Planning Commission. We anticipate, as I said, that will be held in early January, but again, it will be noticed, it will be published. It will also be on the Township website. Yes, sir.
We all have to come back to that planning commission thing?
Yes.
Or this is, our voices heard now?
Well, certainly there will be a record from this evening's meeting. This will get passed on to the Planning Commission. You are absolutely invited, however, either to the meeting in front of the Planning Commission if you'd like to attend, or to the Township Board, which will be held after that. In addition, if you want to submit written comments, that's perfectly fine too, and those will be received by and made part of the record and looked at by both the Planning Commission and the Board.
If nobody showed up at the planning commission here, they didn't hear everything's dandy.
Well, given this evening's record, I don't think they're going to think everything's dandy. So,
But you still need to show up.
okay, unless there's anything else, then I'm going to turn it back to Mr. Holman because technically he has to adjourn the meeting.
Again, thank you for coming, and yes, we're listening. That's why we're here. So, at 8:20, I adjourn this meeting.